Everyone, and welcome to the Spurs Pursuit. I'm your host Martin Frank, and today with me it's an absolute pleasure and privilege to bring on a lovely guest in Kallum Stubbs himself from Project Spurs. Kallum, hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. It's been a quiet couple of weeks, ain't it? And then just as we're getting back into it, we hope to do it. But obviously, great to be here, mate. Thanks for having me. And I know we've done a couple of shows before together on different channels, so good to finally do one on yours as well, mate.
Yeah, and last time we actually spoke, you was the host and I was the guest. So today we'll have the roles flipped a little bit. So just to make everyone clear, today is just a quick preview of Sunderland. But of course, we have to talk about a lot of things happening that are not happening on the field, but off the field. So we'll get into that in a second. So Kallum, starting off with the big news coming today by, first released by Tom Barkley, then touched upon by Ali Gold. And just as you mentioned, as we were in the backstage, the club have confirmed it. Mohammed Kudus is out for the rest of the season, but will be requiring an operation. So we will not see him for the remaining 7 games. Just the news that Roberto De Zerbi would want. So Kallum, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm actually gutted because we've kind of seen over the last couple of weeks a few different people easing back from injury, and he just started linking up with the team the start of this week, and then doing his own individual stuff last week into this week. So we were so close and yet so far. And it's like we always thought the war would be over by Christmas. I mean, Spurs' injury crisis won't be done by next Christmas by this stage. Let's put it that way. So it's really, really difficult, mate. And I think that based on what a couple of different people have been saying, that Kudus has met with De Zerbi, he was already starting to integrate, tell him what his plan was. So this is gutting for both of them, surely, because he is one of our most effective wingers that we've got at the club.
Definitely, and we've missed him. We've missed him so badly because since his injury came, which was actually against Sunderland, that's the irony of it all, that, he was meant to return for Sunderland. And, again, Sunderland comes round the corner after 4 months and he's re-injured himself. And Kallum, you mentioned that in the backstage that, he started training with the team. You also touched upon it, that he had some conversations with Roberto De Zerbi. So my next question for you is about the actual medical staff itself, because, in the last 5 years, Tottenham Hotspur have changed the medical team 4 times. The last time it changed was actually last summer, where Thomas Frank brought in a new medical head of department and a new science head of department. And again, we're in the same position year on year. So is there something seriously wrong with the medical department?
Honestly, I would say, yeah. There's got to be some question over it because we've got the highest injury threshold in the Premier League, I'm sure, at the moment. I mean, it used to be West Ham, didn't it? And Arsenal when they had Jack Wilshere on their books. I mean, literally, I thought once we got rid of Eric Lamela that we was out of this. Turns out we're nowhere near done with it. I remember when we had Jeff Scott down there as well, and he got sacked. They turned it over. Now, where are we? Because, I thought we'd done this rebuild. We're trying to rebuild the on-field staff. We're trying to rebuild the medical department as well. Can we rebuild anything else? And it's really disheartening when we think that we're getting so close to having something good and then we get caught out by medical grounds again. If he required surgery, why didn't we do it 3-4 months ago? We left it too long with Kulusevski and Dom Solanke. Is it the players that are stopping us wanting to get not wanting to do surgery? Is it their agents not wanting to do surgery? Is it our medical team being too scared of going, maybe we can do something, but maybe we can't? These are the questions that we don't see as podcasters, as fans, as the general walk down, because we're not medical professionals, and it's always really difficult to say. I was listening to a podcast by Ben Jacobs today when he was talking to Last Wall on Spurs, saying obviously medical documents, they're all private, they're all closed off, so you cannot get information on it apart from snippets here and there, and you always have to take a pinch of salt because we are not medical professionals. But he said something very key, that these injuries that we've had have been so long and so far through and past where we expected that some of these players have seen like 3 managers out in that time as well. And they don't seem to be recovering quick enough. I mean, when we hear it's a knock and those knocks turn into long-term surgery or injuries or maybe even an amputation, you never know. That's how in the dark we are over this situation, which isn't good.
Yeah, I read a statistic today that Christian Eriksen had literally died and was playing football earlier than Dejan Kulusevski. And of course we're speaking about 2 different problems, but just that sort of sums it up, that someone can literally die, come back to life, and go on the field earlier than someone who apparently had a knock that you mentioned. So we can mention not only on one hand, but on 2 hands. You would actually need 2 hands to mention how many long-term injuries we've had in the short term, in it maybe last 3 years. And Kallum, do you think a big factor of that is the squad depth? Because we saw a very similar situation happen to Newcastle, where they were competing in the Champions League and they had so many injuries as well. Or do we mainly need to be actually looking at the medical department?
I think we've got to look at both sides of it, to be honest, because realistically, people have said Spurs have got squad depth, but squad depth ain't good enough. Okay, so we take that as option number 1. We then promoted all of our youngsters up to the first team training, and we lost Luca Williams-Barnett, we lost Tiernan Thompson, we lost Janil Byfield, and we lost a few others along the way whilst they was training with the first, so they couldn't even play with the under-21s. So we then slaughtered our youth prospects squad depth. We then have to look at the medical department, and what are they saying to the head coaches? Obviously Postecoglou apparently had a falling out with them last year, where he went, they could play. The medical department went, no, they can't. And that's how we lost Romero and Van der Ven again there. So is it down to the manager overruling the department? Do they not have faith in the medical team? Because the manager's thinking, you told me it was a knock. Now you're telling me that he's got to have his legs sliced apart and he's got a robotic leg like Robocop. That's the situation we're getting into. That what's the information going between these departments? But then you then have to question okay, right, fine. If we've got a first 11 that we rely on, usually managers pick about up to their, say, 16 to 18 players in their squad as their guaranteed stars, and the rest of it is filled out in the modern game. Well, if we're saying that we've got 11 or 12 good ones and then the rest of them are all just crap and not good enough, then that's poor squad planning by the club as well, realistically.
Fantastic points. And like Kallum mentioned, we brought in young players, academy players to train with the senior team. And like Kallum said, they got injured. Every single one of them got injured. Kallum also mentioned Romero Van der Ven situation against Chelsea last year, where Postecoglou suddenly brought them in the team, both got injured in that same game. So there's clearly a lack of communication there. There's poor communication there. But also there's clearly some big issues, because how many players have got re-injured from coming back? Definitely, Kallum, you make some fantastic points. But of course, we're a little bit on, tight on time today. So we'll get into the Sunderland on Sunday, which we are at the minute maybe looking forward to. We might not be feeling the same way tomorrow night if West Ham United do manage to beat Wolverhampton Wanderers, because we will find ourselves in the relegation zone for the first time this calendar year and this season as well. We've been in this relegation battle. We've actually never sat in the relegation zone compared to Nottingham Forest and West Ham, who have both sat there for at least a day. Now, Kallum, how confident are you going into this Sunderland game? We've got a new manager, so there is the potential for a manager bounce, but also we are Tottenham Hotspur.
It is. There's 2 parts to me, because I've missed football for 3 weeks. I've missed my club. We've got a new manager in them 3 weeks. I'm hoping that he's had all the great effect that all the journos have said about, that he's made bonds with the players, that they've loved his training, he's been individually coaching them, getting his way across. So I'm thinking, great, yeah, they're all ready to go for Sunderland. The other half of me thinks our squad don't have the belly for it, and we are going to be a lot more slower, a lot less match fitness, and that our players are going to be how they were at the Nottingham Forest game that myself and so many other thousands of fans were at, where we thought we're down and out there and then. That's the two halves of me that are split. My brain's telling me, yeah, we could get that we're probably going to be slow and lethargic. My heart's telling me, no, new manager bounce. Let's really go for it this time.
I'm feeling the exact same way, Kallum. I'm literally feeling the exact same way as you, because you can't predict it. You really can't jump and say we'll win or we'll lose or we'll draw. It's impossible. It's genuinely impossible. And like you say, do they have the belly? Because yes, West Ham are out of the FA Cup, and that was a massive blow for maybe their confidence. But no one can say right now that West Ham will lose to Wolves tomorrow. You know, and if that does happen and they win, we are in trouble. Like, we are in actual trouble. And do the players have the belly? That's a fantastic point you make. But what I will allude to now is Tottenham Hotspur are unbeaten against Sunderland in 15 games in a row. 10 wins, 5 draws. However, we are travelling to the Stadium Light, where Sunderland have a pretty good record. Until their recent 3 losses in a row that they've suffered at home, they were unbeaten at home for the whole season. Now, Kallum, one thing I will mention is, Tottenham Hotspur, you was there against Nottingham Forest. It was an absolute catastrophe. It was maybe the perfect time for the international break to come. On the other hand, Sunderland had beaten their, fiercest rivals in the Wear-Tyne derby against Newcastle. Has the international break come at the perfect time?
It's a difficult one, because realistically, probably no one. Well, you can never tell how the Wear-Tyne derby is going to go. I mean, I've been to one of them derbies, and don't get me wrong, the Stadium of Light is an interesting place. Sunderland is not my nicest place in the UK to visit, but that's no discredit to Sunderland. But it's a fierce fought stadium. It's whenever you go to somewhere in the north of England and want to watch football, these guys are up for it, and no matter where they are, they will want to give their team 100% backing, and they will be loud, they will be aggressive. So for them, probably no, they didn't want the international break to happen. They would have wanted the bounce. For us, realistically, I think we needed it, but our hope was that we would get some players back. If anything, we've lost 2 in Vicario and Kudus again. And the whole aim, get the hernia operation done over the time. That'll get him back in shape. Well, it looks like he won't be back for another 2 weeks. Kudus obviously expected back now. Well, now he's dead. Now he's gone. So realistically, I do think that it's probably better for Sunderland over us, to be honest, because we were still waiting. We've had De Zerbi a week. I think it is now a week as of yesterday, I believe.
Yes.
So we still had a week and a half of our players either being on holiday that they'd already agreed with Igor Tudor before he realistically walked out, and the other players were training with Bruno Salter, and Bruno stayed on as part of Igor Tudor's coaching staff, but a lot of the players hadn't returned until the end of last week. So we I think we're picking and clutching at straws a little bit, but if we're being honest, then I think Sunderland are going to be more in a position ready to go for this after beating their fiercest rivals compared to Spurs, and I hate to say it.
And you're spot on. You are, and the fact that they lost 3 games in a row, they'll be definitely wanting to change that. And Kallum, maybe you see it the same as me. As I genuinely think that a lot of fans, whenever we're now travelling to certain stadiums, it feels like the fans and the players, they really want Tottenham to lose because they really want Tottenham to go down. It feels like it. So could that be that extra motivation for both the Sunderland fans and the players? Captain Granit Xhaka.
It's a hard one. I mean, I like many Spurs fans, think Granit Xhaka is a total arse. Let's put it that way, from the stuff that we had with him. But I don't think Sunderland have that much of a rivalry with Spurs, but definitely our London rivals are thinking we can put you down. Like West Ham, when they beat us a couple of weeks back, they're thinking, wow, that's them points got them so close to us. That's the scenario we're in, where there are teams who want us to go down. There are other teams who I don't think really care, to be honest. But if we are being honest, realistically, Spurs are definitely going to be considered the underdogs here. And that's not how it should be. I mean, Sunderland are a newly promoted team, but they're the ones that are in form. They're the ones that have come up, survived, and look like they're going to survive quite comfortably, aren't they, in the Premier League?
Well, if they beat us and results go their way, they could be in European positions. They could be in 7th spot. Leapfrogging Brentford and Everton. That will most likely not happen because that they would need 3 results to go against, for teams against them, and Sunderland to beat us to get to 7th. So potentially it might not happen now, but they're still pushing for European places. They're in touch. They're only 2 points off 7th spot. So like you mentioned, the way they've handled the situation, and that is something I will allude to now is, you've already touched upon it, Kallum. Guglielmo Vicario has been, sent for his hernia surgery. He's clearly been playing under some discomfort. If we remember his Liverpool goal kick, where it clearly looked like he was in some pain, and seemingly he's been playing with that pain for a longer period of time. And now in goal comes Antonín Kinský, who in his last game was subbed off in the 16th minute, something I have never ever seen in my life. And Sunderland are also most likely without their, number one goalkeeper in Robin Roofs. But at the minute, Melke Elberg has been playing there, and he's been putting in very decent shifts. And Sunderland fans have got behind him, and they've been quite positive about him. Not the same can be said about Antonín Kinský. Now, what is your stance, Kallum, with Antonín Kinský? How much confidence does he fill you with going into Sunday?
It's a hard one because I feel there's a young lad there. He's 22, 23. So he is a young goalkeeper. He's not a James Trafford by any stretch. He's not a Mark Verbruggen, someone like that, who are very similar in age. There is a player in there, but it's a player that has been underutilised for going on a year and a half now. He's maybe played less than 10 games in less than 18 months. So he's going to be rusty. And we saw a very unconfident sort of squad with him against Atletico.
Yeah.
We saw him have low confidence after that. So it's a question that I don't think we can confidently answer. But my honest opinion will be that I am not comfortable with any of our goalkeeping options as a whole. I know they say Vicario's been injured or had his hernia, but he's been below par for probably 14, maybe 16 months now, going into the back end of Ange Postecoglou's tenure, when we started just descending down the table. Antonín Kinský, like we've agreed, underutilised, undervalued by the club, and quite a weird move, if we're being honest now. And then Brandon Austin is someone who is a Tottenham lad, but has had one game properly for Spurs against, I think it was Newcastle last year, when we lost all of our keepers. I like him, but I think he is more than his place as part of the furniture now, like Ben Davies, realistically, that he is just kind of there for numbers. So I don't think our goalkeeping options are really inspiring, to say the least, even with Sunderland's number one out and their number two doing decent. I mean, we know that Brian Broby does like a goal, doesn't he, up front for Sunderland? So we need someone to be switched on and ready to do their job, because if not, our keepers ain't got a chance.
Definitely. And like we saw with the defenders against Nottingham Forest, it doesn't fill us with confidence at all. And I think someone made a great point, is to have a good goalkeeper, the big advantage is having a good defence. A defence that protects the goalkeeper who doesn't really have to deal with much. That won't be the case. And Kinský has to up his game. Kinský has to be spot on with the performances, because our next 3 fixtures, Sunderland, Brighton and Wolves, I guarantee you Vicario will be part of none of these 3 games. And then afterwards it gets quite tricky. We've got Aston Villa, Leeds, Chelsea. So right now, these next 3 games coming up, this is where we need to get points. And Antonín Kinský, we saw how he didn't very well handle the pressure in Madrid. And, I'm a little sceptical of his performance. I hope that De Zerbi can fill him with confidence, because Roberto De Zerbi does like a goalkeeper who is comfortable with his feet, which Antonín Kinský clearly is. Of course, didn't show that against Atletico Madrid with 2 absolute howlers. But apart from that, if you remember his debut against Liverpool, it was filled with confidence. It was, like you mentioned, a young lad who has been underdeveloped by the club, and he should have been loaned out in the summer, most definitely. And we've halted his development growth since the summer. He's played 4 games. And in one of those games, he's been subbed off in the 15th or 16th minute, not due to injury. So it's going to be very interesting. And Kallum, let's say you are part of the coaching staff. Let's say you are his goalkeeping coach. What are you telling Antonín Kinský going into this game?
Telling him just be brave, be positive, stand by your distinctions of what you want to do, and just have faith where you are, because realistically we know he can't have much faith in our back line. Let's put it that way, to be honest, because I don't think even the club have faith in their back line, to be honest. That's where we're sort of sitting at the moment. But if he's being honest, he can stand by and just marshal his box and don't shout at everyone like Vicario does. Don't blame everyone for your mistakes. Just stand by what you do and have the conviction to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely agree. And I think that, just some background information, Antonín Kinský's father is actually an ex-professional goalkeeper, so I'm sure he's got enough support at home and stuff. I think I agree with you. I think he just needs to be brave, and he has a massive opportunity to turn his career around with these, recent fixtures. I guess you could actually look at it from a different perspective and go, look, you really messed up that Champions League run that Tottenham could have potentially gone on, because at home we hold a fantastic record, 25 games unbeaten in European competitions. Now is your opportunity to, sort of get away from that mistake and change your career, because I do think that Antonín Kinský's future doesn't lie with Tottenham, it lies somewhere else, potentially in a different league. So it will be very interesting to see. Of course, we can't predict anything going into this game because we don't have anything to predict, or we don't have any samples to base it on. And that will be very interesting. I think going into the actual formation itself that will be picked, if there are no new injuries, which I'm guessing there aren't, I guess the back four picks itself. But Kallum, what I'm quite interested in who do you think in this 4-2-3-1 system will be partnered in midfield? The 2 sixes, can we say?
It's going to be difficult because, we need to work out what formation he's definitely going to play.
Yeah.
Don't we? First, but if he is going to play, just say a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, then you'd probably say the most reliable at the moment are Gray and Sarr in there. But the problem is Sarr was noted to be injured over the international break with Senegal. He didn't partake in, I believe, one of their games. He has been in training. Gray is your most reliable. Bergvall had a good impact for Sweden, but I do always think there is something more that he can give, and I don't think him and Archie sort of being as the 2 lower men is suitable. Probably he deserves to be more further forward. Conor Gallagher, I've been under-deceived by, but I think we're asking an 8 to play as a 6. We've got an abundance of 8s who can't even play really much, can't pass the ball together. So we're kind of stuck with a very mismatched midfield pairing. And if I see Basuma get a resurgence under De Zerbi like he did start getting under Igor Tudor, I will really be disappointed because they wanted rid of him last summer. So why would we have a resurgence again for someone who has one of the worst attitudes in football? The problem and like I was alluding to, is that we've got too many players who are very similar. They're all a sort of jack of all trades and not good at any of them, sort of thing. They're half reasonable. We're wanting people in that position to give us 7, 8, 9 out of 10 performances, aren't we? And to shield our back line. Well, we're relying on them giving us a 3 to a 5 at the moment and not even playing in a position of a 6. So we can't even get to us. That it's really unbalanced in that midfield. That's where my reservations come with it. And I think De Zerbi would probably be seeing that too.
I agree. And I think what you started to touch upon with Archie Gray and Lucas Bergwall is fantastic. It's a massive risk playing him, the two together, because they're so young, right? And there is a sort of lack of experience if you play both Archie Gray and Lucas Bergwall. But then, like you've already alluded to, Kallum, in my eyes as well, Conor Gallagher has been such a massive disappointment. He's been played out of position. He's been either playing as a 6 or as a right midfielder, which that is not his primary position. But then again, you've come in as a big money signing, your wages are absolutely through the roof, and you should be performing at least to a 6-7 performance, and that's not what we're seeing. So I think it's definitely very difficult to pick. But Kallum, one name you didn't mention is João Palhinha. Do you think Roberto De Zerbi will try and maybe look at him and go, right, this guy brings only one thing, and that is maybe leadership and experience, because he doesn't bring any composure onto the ball. He doesn't bring any of that. Do you think that he can still play a part, or is it mainly looking at different, angles?
I mean, if we draw comparisons to probably his most recent team in Marseille, he kind of had that in Højbjerg, didn't he? As someone who obviously Spurs fans know very well. And João Palhinha was probably the same sort of calibre level player as that. But what you can do in the French league and what you can do in the English league is two different things. And you can definitely see that even though there is a decent player in João Palhinha, it's probably not what we need. And if you have him play, what do you sacrifice? That's my main faults. Like, who else should we have in there? Like, do we want high energy? Do we want this? Do we want that? And don't get me wrong, I'm clutching at straws because we don't really have much of anything in our midfield at the moment, apart from maybe Archie Gray, who's been probably our player of the season. But realistically, I mean, if you play Archie and Palhinha, that means Palhinha has to stay back and Archie doesn't. And then you need to then have Palhinha deep, Archie as the ball carrier, and just 10 in front of him. You don't have Palhinha, Gray and Gallagher, or Palhinha, Gray, Sarr in there. It doesn't work like that because you have no creative balance. It kind of leaves you with saying, do you play someone like Xavi Simons in there with them, who we've been excited by at times, but mainly in European games this season. So it's about getting the midfield balance right. And as soon as you start going from that 2 into a 3, even in a diamond setup as such, or a triangle, if you want to call it that, you then start opening up even bigger problems in the squad building issues. And all we're trying to do is getting 2 people in midfield who can actually do a job at the moment. That's the problem.
Exactly, because like you said, we literally have about 3-4 profiles that are identical. They're all ball carriers. They don't offer something different. They all offer the same, sort of attributes that we're not looking for right now in that balance of midfield. And you have to have that balance in midfield. You mentioned it, Kallum. It's the most important aspect to have that balance in mainly the 2 6s. And if we're unable to do so, maybe Roberto De Zerbi will have to be forced into changing formation, which I don't think will happen. But that brings me to my next point, which I will link. And that is the injury of Mohammed Kudus that we've already touched upon at the beginning of this video. Who do you personally play there? Of course, Randall Kolo Muani is the most logical shout, but it's a massive complication, isn't it?
Yeah. We're literally back to clutching at straws. I mean, we lost Tell in the Forest game. We then had Richie, who was out of form that game. We had Dom Solanke, who, for all he's huffing and puffing and trying, did that. And then that leaves us Rando Kolo Moani. There are 4 forward options at the moment, apart from Xavi Simons in there. They are all out of form. They are not in any shape or form confident, I don't think, with what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we're kind of hoping that it all turns around and works brilliantly for us, because at the moment it's not. I mean, anyone who values Kolo Moani, I just don't see it, to be honest. I think there is a player devoid of confidence and doesn't want to be at Spurs. I see someone in Charleston who gives his all on the pitch but is not up to the level required. I see someone in Dom Solanke who has tried to carry the team but hasn't been anywhere like his Bournemouth days or his first season for us either, and has had to carry a team with no one supporting him around that. I think there's a good young player in Matthias Tell, but the key in that is young. And then Xavi Simons, who is not a winger, who is an inside player. And I don't even know if De Zerbi plays with a 10, to be honest. In some of it, it might be that he does play with 3 inverting forwards and then someone deeper behind there. So you can't really, if you're going to go on paper, you say that probably our strongest front 3 is Solanke, Tell, Dom for it, and Kolo Moani sits on the bench, and Simons is either played in that midfield or he is on the bench. But some reason Igor Tudor fancied Moani because of his time at Juventus, and to be honest, it paid no dividends whatsoever, realistically. So
none. We're
limited in all areas, I think, apart from maybe defence at the moment. And I mean, I know our defence we ain't really spoken about because we know it can pretty much right itself, but even they're not up to the level that we're expecting from players that are, i.e. what we would class very good.
Yeah, and I didn't even touch upon it, but Destiny Udogie was brought on at half-time for Nottingham Forest by playing 32 minutes in 3 months.
He was shit. He was shit. He was useless.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have to also look at the manager picking him, because he had played 32 minutes in the Atletico Madrid game, and you throw him in without any. He hasn't played for 3 months, and you throw him in. He was absolutely horrific, and that just makes you think and wonder what on earth was Igor Tudor thinking at the time, bringing him on. And yes, Destiny Udogie is miles off it. So okay, Kallum, let's bring that up then. Who do we play at the left back position? Jed Spencer's played regular football, but he isn't a natural left back. Or do you risk playing Destiny Udogie and somehow believe that during this 3-week break that we've had, he's somehow managed to get his maybe match sharpness and fitness up?
I mean, if you're going for your best back 4, then you do go realistically Udogie, Van der Ven, Romero, Porro. And that's, I think, what I'd rather. This experiment that every Spurs manager seems to have, including our England manager, in playing Jed Spence left back or playing left wing, is, I mean, the more times I've looked at this brick wall next to me here and wanted to bang my head against it. I don't know what they see in it that we don't see as fans, because it just doesn't work. You're playing a right-sided player on the left-hand side who constantly wants to cut in, and it just restricts your movement. So I would always go with a natural left footer. I would also go with my natural left-sided players over that side. So if you're going to play Van der Ven and Udogie, then you play them on the left. You then play Romero and Porro or Spence at right back as well. And I feel sorry for saying that we're going to drop Danso out of the team, but he didn't have the greatest game against Forest. He was at fault for ball watching. Romero was at fault for not doing anywhere near what you expect your captain. So it does call into question most of our back line in general, to be honest. But we'll see. we'll see, because they've got to play to get into form, realistically.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe, I think Roberto De Zerbi will see that as well. And I think, with what Roberto De Zerbi has done at different clubs, he's always played a natural left back in a natural left back position, using some common sense, because where is most of the space on the pitch? It's not in the middle. That's where there is the least amount of space. It's on the sides. And when you've got a right-footed player playing at left back, what's he going to do? He's going to cut inside onto his right foot and automatically puts the ball into the space where, it's just, there's everyone there and you're not using the width. So I agree with you, Kallum, and I can't personally see even Thomas Tuchel using that at England. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, you've already touched upon it. It makes sense, Kallum playing at right wing, which obviously as fans we don't want to be seeing, because Kallum hasn't really brought anything since his arrival to the club. There's been maybe one or two good performances, and we're speaking now in April, and he's arrived in September. So it's not something that we would have been expecting. And the fact that Brennan Johnson was a natural right winger, and right, fine, we've sold him for 35 million. I will forever be grateful for Brennan Johnson scoring the goal in the final. And, he was ultimately also our top scorer. But if you want to move forward as a big club, you don't really want to be moving forward with Brennan Johnson. And that's no discredit to him. You've got 35 million for him. You've got Mohammed Kudus injured on the 5th of January, and you do not replace him with no right winger, not even in the short term as a loan deal. So Kallum, now it's the time to touch upon also the board and the ownership and everything that's maybe gone wrong, because Johan Lange and Vinay Venkatesham are one of the biggest reasons we are in the situation we are in.
Realistically, yeah. We are in a position where we are questioning every moment that's happened from last summer to January to now. Don't get me wrong, I liked Brennan Johnson. I thought he wasn't the greatest player, but he did score goals. And sometimes you need that, like what you would have with, just say, an Aaron Lennon type, someone who we all loved in the past and was a quick, silky player. But if we're being honest, he's not sort of going to take you forward. So the hope was that obviously Kudus was going to be in there from January. That was the whole point, and we was hoping that Kulusevski would have been back as well. But to have him injured, then not sign anyone, left us exposed. And there was a lot of wingers available in January on free transfers or to be loaned or bought with options. And we saw with the Johan Lange interview after that, we knew players were coming back from injury. Well, how many players have we had back since January? Because only half of them were coming back at the end of March. That's why we're in this position. And January was the prime opportunity to, one, I know we're not saying about it, but one, sack Thomas Frank when they first started considering it. And two, also get players in, because we had secured Champions League football and we were still in the FA Cup as well. We had stuff to play for. Now we're in a precarious position where, and I know people say that realistically the clubs plan 5 windows in advance when looking at their transfer business and their dealings, but we're now in a position where we're either touting Premier League players and saying, we might be in the Premier League, but you'll have to wait until the last day of the season. Or you're touting players in the Championship who you'll then be ghosting if you survive Premier League, if you secure Premier League survival. So you're alienating one lot or screwing over the other. This is a position where the board directors, the board sporting leadership as such, have to stand up and be accounted for, realistically. And it seems that we've had to go and question 2 managerial appointments and then also look at Roberto De Zerbi and go, we've got a man here who has been highly wanted by the club and realistically is now being given as much power as a sporting director would be given. I mean, you don't see that in football anymore. That's how desperate this board have left us. they've had to go away from this head coach role of, the head coach deals with the players and the playing staff and trains them and does them in matches. The sporting department does with the transfers and the contracts, all of that. Now we've got a manager, and he will be managing large majorities of the club with probably a veto power as well. That's what we're in. And this is what made us all question where the club are, because so many decisions made this year have been weak, poorly timed, not taken at all, faffed about with as if we're looking at business people, not sporting people.
Yeah, exactly. And, we can argue that Johan Lange hasn't been put in the correct, let's say department or role, because, where he strives the most is being the senior scout. He has brought in fantastic players in the past, but he's never been a sporting director at no club. And suddenly he's in this role and he's absolutely clueless in what he's doing. But it's also, we have to look at the people appointing him. And the fact that he's put in a role that he's never done before is reflected on the pitch, because you've got Conor Gallagher, Lucas Berger playing right midfield, you've got Jed Spence playing left back, you've got certain players playing positions they've never played before, and it's a reflection of what's happening off the field. So Kallum, fantastic point there. And you already touched upon Roberto De Zerbi a little bit, and I've not even asked you, but do you think Roberto De Zerbi was a panic purchase, or not really a purchase, but a panic setting in mode from Johan Lange and Vinay Venkatesan to bring him in? Or do you think that maybe they've struck luck?
I think they was forced to do it, if anything, because based on what we've all heard and from speaking to different people, it looks like Pochettino was only touted about the role, and he's now said that there was no official contact. You could have unconfirmed contact, but nothing official along them lines, and there was always the question of whether he would leave early from the USA. It seems pure luck that De Zerbi fell into that sort of same scenario when Thomas Frank was sacked at sort of like in February time. But De Zerbi is probably the best available at the moment, and apparently he was highly rated by them, and Paratici recommended him previously. Apparently De Zerbi turned Spurs down previously as well when it was under Daniel Levy. But he is there, he is available. He knows the Premier League, at least for a couple of year basis. He didn't have success over here, but he didn't have failure either. So I think he is an opportunity that has fallen into their laps as the best possible one. But they've had to put all the bells and whistles out there to make it happen.
I agree. And I was actually really, really, really happy with the appointment of Roberto De Zerbi. Of course, we've got the controversies going on with Mason Greenwood and these comments. And of course, we've got the controversies of him falling out regularly with the board, which is an absolutely awful fit for Tottenham Hotspur. But when we're speaking about the football itself, I've been a big admirer of him, of Roberto De Zerbi, for not too long. I won't say that I was watching him at the time in Italy, but even at Brighton, he was the one that got them the record-breaking finish of finishing 6th in the Premier League, never achieved before with Brighton. He got them into Europa League football. And I think that with the motto of "to dare is to do," and we saw with Thomas Frank and Igor Tudor trying to maybe avoid losing and not actually going for the victory, I think Roberto De Zerbi is the closest man to our motto of "to dare is to do." So there is a lot to like about him as a Spurs fan, but it does maybe scream in the long term with the fact, like you've Kallum mentioned, all these promises that have been fed that he's got this manager role, almost like a Diego Simeone role at Atletico Madrid. Can these promises be false promises, like a Christian Romero calling out the board and claiming they're liars? It's, we'll have to wait and see how it all pans out, but this will be so interesting going forward. And so Kallum, back into the game. So Roberto De Zerbi, first game in charge, potentially, hopefully not, potentially in the relegation zone with the first ball kicked if, West Ham result goes the way it goes. But if we manage to win, we actually put Leeds into the relegation zone. which has not been spoken about, and Leeds haven't actually been spoken about enough in regards to the relegation battle, I would say. It's mainly been talk about West Ham, Tottenham and Nottingham Forest, not so much about Leeds. Do you think that Roberto De Zerbi will go into the principles of, this very tactical football mastermind attacking philosophy, or do you think he'll stick to the basics?
It would make sense to go to remember the basics.
Yeah.
Because our players have forgotten the fundamentals of football. They have forgotten how to do anything simple. They overcomplicate all of it. They cause trouble. When you're in a relegation battle, you make the simple things easy, and then you try something later on. Don't mess about. And it's like you say, Leeds haven't been brought into this enough because they're grinding out little results here, little results there. They're getting a draw here, a draw there. Spurs can't draw. That's the problem. We will just acrimonious lose a game. We'll lose a game of 1-0, or 2-0, or 3-0, or 4-0, or a 4-1 in the Premier League. That's been the story of our life for the last 12 months.
Yeah.
So I feel that probably straight away he needs to just get the basic footballing stuff right with the team. And that's what I hope that he's been doing with the players individually, telling them just calm down, think like football players, don't think like superstars, because at the end of the day, you can't say they're superstars at the moment. No. They are just people kicking the ball. If he does the simple things right, I think we could get a result against Sunderland. I think we could. I mean, if we got a draw from Sunderland, I'd be quite happy, realistically. I know we need the 3 points, but I can see that being a difficult place to go to. But if we do get a draw, then we get a more positive goal difference, and then we push someone down, because the Wolves West Ham game is going to be very tough for both of them teams. And Wolves they're a horrendous team to play against, and they've picked up form at their own ground. I mean, I believe, is it at Molineux game, or is it at? So they like a result there.
Wait. West Ham?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, West Ham are playing at home.
That doesn't fill me with much confidence.
That doesn't fill me with confidence either.
But we have to hope that Wolves have a little bit of fight in them to probably draw that game.
Yeah, hopefully.
Then that does keep it sort of level pegging. But if De Zerbi does get the balance right and picks his team right, and we wipe out the individual mistakes by overcomplicating or overplaying and taking one too many passes, I would hope that we can get something at the weekend.
Definitely. And I think that luck, I think we've been waiting a bit of luck on our side, especially in the Premier League, still going this calendar year without a single victory. And, like you mentioned, if Roberto De Zerbi gets maybe his selection right, maybe if he somehow mentally motivates them, the fact that they've been out, some players, 13 senior players out with international duty, maybe they've come back energised and refreshed. And actually, if we actually do get a result, even if it's a draw, like you mentioned, Kallum, I'd be delighted with a draw. We'd only be 2 points behind Leeds, who play Manchester United on Monday. That's a huge game, because if Leeds fail to win that game, there's pressure on them suddenly, because our next game is at home against Brighton, Roberto De Zerbi's ex-employer. Massive game. That could fill us with some confidence going into it. So I'd absolutely be biting your hand off right now if we're speaking about a win, but I'd be very comfortable with a draw. So, slowly to summarise it, Kallum, how do you see the actual game going, the 90 minutes? Do you see us maybe trailing? Do you see us maybe winning? Of course, it's very hard to predict, but ultimately, after the 90 minutes as well, what's your prediction for it? Not maybe a score prediction, but maybe just a prediction of a win, draw, or loss.
I'm probably going to predict a draw. I want to win, obviously, but I think it's going to be a tough fought battle, and I think it's going to be a close battle. I don't think it's going to be more than 4 goals, I reckon, in it. I think that'd be quite a fair scoreline. Even a 2-2 would be quite fair, to be honest.
I'm going for, I'm going for a draw as well. I really think it seems like it's got a draw screaming all over it, but if we'd somehow magically get a win, with that, like we've been mentioning, we haven't had the luck on our side. And, I don't want to be mentioning injuries for other teams, but can you imagine West Ham getting an injury to a Jared Bowen or Mavropanos at the back and how their season would start to fall apart? So maybe there is a bit of luck waiting on our side into these final 7 games, although it doesn't feel like it because the only news coming out is Mohammed Kudus injured. Maybe Paps are injured with Roberto De Zerbi's press conference tomorrow. Now, Kallum, last question for you today. Because it's very difficult to predict the game week coming in now, but what is maybe a bit easier to predict is, can Tottenham Hotspur survive in the Premier League?
We need 9 points. So we need to find out where them 9 points are going to come. And if when we play Leeds on the 12th of May,
yes,
and we lose that, we could be down. Because I can't see us getting points against Chelsea. I can't really see us getting points against Villa. So we need to get points against Sunderland. We need to get points against Wolves, points against Brighton.
Yeah.
These have got... And the issue that we have at the moment is that at least 3 of the teams that we're playing against are either down or around where we are. 3 of the others are competing for the European places in Aston Villa, Chelsea, Everton as well. The variable, 4 of them. So 3 are probably relegation candidates or close to us, with Brighton being the outlier. And then 4 going for European places. So we are right in the mix of other people. The Premier League's not settled yet. We're trying to take points off of people who are trying to do something themselves, either survive or get a big prestigious competition, which some of them haven't had for years. So I do think we will survive, but I'm finding it very difficult to see where them points are going to come from at the moment to go along with it.
Exactly. That's 13 Premier League games in a row that we've failed to win a game. Like, you mentioned we need 9 points for safety. We can't even get 3 points in the last 4 months. So that's the most insane part, is, do the players still have that winning mentality? I agree with you. I think that we could look to be safe by the end of the 7 games. I think we've got a very competent manager to get us there, but it will be very, very difficult. But Kallum, let's say there was a gun to your head and you had to predict the 3 wins correctly. What 3 games are you picking out and saying this is the highest chance that we actually win them?
Brighton, Leeds, Wolves.
Yeah, I'd probably go for this. You know what? I'm actually going to go with Everton at the last game of the season. I understand you're mentioning they could be well in for it for the European places. They are currently. But maybe they just fall off and maybe they have nothing to play for and it'll be an absolutely huge game for us. And we managed to get the win. Last question completely for you, Kallum, is, do you think it will go down to the final game of the season?
No, I think it'll be decided by the Leeds game, to be honest.
I hope so. I really hope so. Can you...
Because imagine that if Arsenal win the league on the last day of the season, we get relegated.
Yeah, that would be...
That's like us just burning witches and all that at the stake. That's how bad it would be. And it'd be like seeing Leicester getting... I mean, if we're looking down a league, Leicester could get relegated to League One on the last day of the season as well. That's how bad it is. And they won the Premier League less than 10 years ago.
It's dreadful. And I don't want to be saying that they're favourites or anything, but can you imagine Arsenal actually manage a double of winning the Champions League as well, when Tottenham Hotspur in that season get relegated? But some people have argued that maybe this is exactly what the club needs. A relegation and a reset. What is your point on this? Because it's not as rosy as people think. That there's so much disproportion that comes with the economic aspect of football, where the club will be set back a minimum 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is you can say, one, you go straight down, you then get balloon parachute payments and come back up. And then you get money. So like how Fulham have done, how Crystal Palace have done. The problem is you've then got on the other side of that, you've got your Ipswiches, your Norwiches, your yo-yo clubs who just go backwards and forwards and then get stuck in a rut. I mean, Southampton at the moment look like they are challenging to come back up, but they're not guaranteed to. Saints were a Premier League club for going on 10 years up till last year, weren't they? So this is what the problem is. It is harder to get out of the Championship and then stay in the Premier League, because remember, our squad will be decimated.
Agreed.
And I would love to see our young players play in the Championship, because some of them have done cracking this season. But you've then got to think that we still have to have money to function. We still have to beat teams. You play more games in the Championship as well. You play, 46, I think it is. So you play another 7-8 games on top of it. And our squad was bad enough in the Premier League, let's put it that way.
Agreed. And that would be an absolute catastrophe to happen. I really think it would. And, some people said, but maybe the club would finally sell. It wouldn't sell, though, because it would be undervalued in the Championship, and that would be just a stupid decision to make to sell it then. So that would definitely not happen. Kallum, thank you so much for having you on. Of course, that Sunderland game will be absolutely gigantic, and hopefully we're able to speak in the near future. I'd love to have you on. You're an absolute legend for coming on. So just maybe someone would be quite interested to find you somewhere. So where can people find you on social media?
It's been a pleasure as always, mate, and always a lot of fun. But yes, you can find me at Kallum Stubbs 97 on X. You can also find me at Project Spurs alongside Gary, Joseph, Phil, and both Size on there as well. So go and check us out. And we're doing our post-match podcast, I believe, 4 till 5 on after the Sunderland game. So it could be a good game. It could be a therapy session, mate. So we will see.
No more therapy sessions. I think this could be the changing point in our season. Let's hope so. Kallum, thank you so much. You're an absolute legend for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. Just lastly, what I wanted to say was, are you planning on going to any Spurs games this season? Because you was there for the Forest game and you saw what the club did. You was part of it. You was part of, bringing the atmosphere, the energy there. Do you think the fans will have the gut to do so? And would you have the guts to do so once again after being let down?
I may do one more before the end of the season, but I don't know yet. There's a good chance I'll probably do under 21s games instead. So I'm going tomorrow night against Wolves, 7 o'clock at the Amex Stadium in Stevenage, with obviously Gary Ward from Project Spurs. So there's a good chance I'll do that, and probably more of the youth games before the end of the season compared to firsts, I think, at the moment. But I will still be watching from my sofa or on my phone from somewhere in the world, supporting my club one way or another.
Of course, it doesn't matter if we're in the Championship or we're still in the Premier League, we'll still be following this club. Kallum, once again, thank you. Thank you anyone who watched this video. I really appreciate it. More content to come this week, so stay tuned. If not, you can check out the articles on the Spurs Pursuit. Have a lovely, lovely day, everyone, and see you later. Bye-bye. Right, perfect, Kallum. Thank